Science, exercise, nutrition, health, energy, passion. 1 year, no beer. This is the 1 year no beer podcast, where you will find all the latest tips, tricks, and hacks for a way to live better.
Welcome to the 1 year no beer podcast. I'm Rory Fairbairns.
And I'm Andy Ramage.
Yes, you are the legend that you are. I think actually somebody put that in the podcast reviews, said an awful lot of the two guys saying awesome and whatever.
Yeah, but that's good. It's good. And you will notice if you're watching this on the YouTube channel that we're both in hoodies because it's absolutely freezing.
The beast from the east is currently swooped in on both of us. For those of you who are not in the UK listening, that's the name of our latest weather front, which has brought a lot of snow and chaos to the UK. My wife always laughs about this. So she's from Sweden, and obviously every year they get a lot of snow, and they have all the facilities to cater for it. We have like a talcum powder dusting the butt cheeks of a baby, right, of snow. And all of a sudden, everything grinds to a halt. Trains stop working. No buses. Flights cancelled, school's off.
Yeah, actually, on that note, not to dive in it too deeply, but the best one was that they cancelled all the trains and then it didn't snow. So we even cancel stuff before it snows. Yeah, just in case of the light dusting. Anyway.
Well, that's like your favourite thing, preparation. You love preparation, don't you?
I do love a bit of preparation. And actually, on that note, it is key to any successful alcohol-free adventure is to prepare. You cannot prepare enough. It's so key. And again, if you come and become one of our fantastic members, you'll get a lot of that in the accountability posts and also our book. And the reason we want to talk about our book today is because this is not airing on World Book Day, but we are recording this on World Book Day, which is so cool. And we forget that we've got this wonderful book, the 28-Day Alcohol-Free Challenge, which is the perfect accompaniment to any alcohol-free adventure. Isn't it, Rory?
It is, and it's still in stores up and down the country. I saw it just the other day in a Sainsbury's, I think. So yeah, it's still out there. I'm looking on Amazon. And it looks like the vast majority, nearly 100 reviews, are 5-star. I think two of them are two are anything other than 5-star. So we're very, very, very pleased with that response to our book. And thank you to everybody out there who's bought the book already. If you haven't bought the book, go and grab yourself a copy. 28-Day Alcohol-Free Challenge.
Nice work. And then before we roll in today's guest, Lee Davy, another guy that needs to write a book, actually. There's a good point. This is an up-and-coming chap in the space of helping people go alcohol-free. And we're here to support all the other people like they supported us, Annie Grace and Addie Jaffe and all these wonderful people that are in this space offering people more choice around alcohol. And that is what's absolutely key for us because, when we first looked at this, the reason we set up 1 year no beer was because there was nothing. We felt there was zero available to us. And there still is only so few ideas. So it's important that we give people choice because what works for them in one area might not work in another. And it's just key. It's key that we give people this wonderful selection where they can pick and choose what works for them. And Lee's very much in this space. So we wanted to get him on the podcast, introduce you to him. And if you want to go and check him out, that's absolutely wonderful because he's doing some brilliant work. And without further ado, let's chat to Lee Davy. Lee, welcome to the 1 year no beer podcast.
How you doing, Andy? It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, we got here in the end after we getting stuck from the beast from the east we have in the UK at the moment. That's what they're calling it. Enough of that excitement. Let's talk about you. And I was thinking about this before we started this podcast when we first met, which was probably 6 months or so ago. I was lucky enough to come on to your podcast, which is called, is it Alcohol and Addiction?
Yeah, the Alcohol and Addiction podcast, yeah.
And we had a fantastic time, actually, just sharing stories of our own stories, really, about how we ended up where we are. And we obviously share a very similar mission in life, and that's to try and help people change their relationship with alcohol in whatever form that may be. And again, very much, lots of what you do jives perfectly with what we do at 1 Year No Beer. It's trying to disrupt the norm actually, and give people different choices, which I think is so super important. I cannot stress that enough, that we give people more choice, because currently at the moment I think it's the most underserved problem market on the planet, because there's been obviously a stereotypical approach to this for so long that actually there hasn't been enough alternatives out there, and it's just brilliant to see what you're doing. So as a long-winded way of really just kicking it off, just to try and find out your story, really, how you ended up to be on this podcast today.
Well, I'm one of those who grew up really programmed from birth, if you like, to drink alcohol, right? I live in the UK, grew up in Ogmore Vale, which is a little Welsh mining town of 3,000 people, where, you know, you drank and you were cool, you didn't drink and people beat you up, right? That's just the way it was. And then I got married very young, had a child, and about 10 years into that marriage, I started to realize that we were fighting all the time and we weren't really getting on. And when I really kind of reflected on that, it seemed to me at the time anyway, that the common denominator was alcohol. You know, we'd have a couple of beers, we'd get rat-ass and we'd start fighting, and it was just getting beyond control.
Do you know, it's interesting actually, because I saw a piece of science and I've been trying to, or study, sorry, I've been trying to find it since. It was in Ireland. I was on a trip to Ireland, and the study suggested that 50% of this survey they did, 50% of all relationship problems were down to alcohol.
Yeah,
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Or as in my case, understanding afterwards, when the fog lifts, so to speak, that there were lots of issues with your relationship which were made worse by alcohol, or hid those relationship problems. So a lot of people think, I've got to get rid of my husband, you know, we're getting drunk all the time, and if we quit drinking, then that will solve stuff. And really, it doesn't, because you stop drinking and then you realize, well, I actually have nothing in common with this person, or my values are completely at odds to what they're interested in, or I can't have sex with this person, I don't know how to speak to this person, you know. And so I think what tends to happen is alcohol really is like a little plaster sometimes, isn't it? You know, we grow up, we all change in a way, we lose connection with our partners, we kind of like, you know, I have a real strong opinion here, Andy, that some point in life we just switch off and we're on autopilot, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not until I stopped drinking that I really started to understand the power of choice, free will, trying to make my own decisions. So, you know, around that time I quit drinking to try to save my marriage, realized that it was, you know, the drinking was a huge problem, but ultimately we couldn't communicate. We were very different people, and got divorced. And then from that point on, I was working in the rail industry, industry for 20 years up to that point. And everything changed for me when I quit drinking, Andy, and I'm sure you've heard it for so many people in 1 year no beer, is that suddenly you stop drinking and you start to self-reflect and to observe your life and ask a lot more questions and be a bit more philosophical. And one of my questions was, well, why am I waking up every morning to go to this business where I've got a really respectable job, but I fucking hate it? Everyone just keeps like shouting at me, and you know, it's hard work. I'm sacking people left, right and centre, because that's what was going on at the time. You're talking, 2007, 2008, when the world was going to rat shit. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And you think, I am a railwayman, I have to do this. Because what am I if I don't do this? How can I support my family? But ultimately, when you're not drinking alcohol, you have that confidence to say, well, I just gave up alcohol.
Yeah, that is brilliant. And that is such a fantastic point, because that's what happened to me. I think when you break that one massive piece of conventional wisdom that you need alcohol to have fun and be successful and all that sort of stuff, when you actually see behind the matrix, that's what it's like, isn't it? It's like seeing behind the matrix and going, do you know what? That was absolute bollocks. There was no need for me to continue to drink, to have fun. I've just destroyed all these limiting beliefs that I've had around alcohol for the last 20 odd years. It opens you up to evaluating everything in your life, whether that's your job, whether that's your relationships, to go, actually, right, let's have a proper look at this now. Let's ask those questions and find out, is this what I want to do? Because I know for a fact I've just destroyed all this conventional wisdom around alcohol. Maybe I can look at these other ideas.
I just remember, I see all the books behind you. I mean, I read Alan Carr's Easy Way to Control Alcohol. and I quit. So all of a sudden I find the power in books. And actually, 10 years before that, I'd read a smoking book and quit smoking, right? So I see the power in books, and all of a sudden I'm reading more and more books, and all these things are coming at me, it's like, well, you should quit your job, and your relationship isn't right. And then I realized that I was a gambling addict. I realized that I was addicted to sugar. I realized that I was a pornography addict. I realized that I was skint and I was in debt, and it was just boom, boom, boom. I need to change everything. And I'm not exaggerating, Andy. I changed everything in my life. I'm remarried. I have a new child. I traveled around the world. I don't keep in touch with any of the friends that I used to have before. I quit my job and created a new one. I gave everything I owned away to a friend of mine because I had nowhere to put it. And that all came from that spark, that alcohol, where it was, like you say, it's just, you realize that you really are in the matrix, and it's not just alcohol. It's like your entire life has been down to a set of decisions you've made where you really didn't have a fucking clue what you were doing. Like, let's take working for the railway. 16 years of age, left school before I'd even finished my GCSEs, got no hope or prayer of getting a decent job, working in a kitchen factory for £30 a week. And then someone says, why don't you join the railway for 82 quid a week? Well, 82? I'll take that. You pass it, 20 years later, you're a railwayman. Well, I'm pretty sure I never used to go to bed praying to the God that I no longer believe in, asking him if I could be a railwayman. I wanted to play for Man United. But at some point along the way, someone tells you you're too small to play for Man United, or you're not good enough, or you don't get the backing for that. So your dad says, look, be realistic. You should be working on the motorways because that is really good money, relining motorways, which is what my dad actually wanted me to do, And then all of a sudden you realize when what was I, 35 years of age? Well, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a man. Like, imagine what I could do now if I made all those core beliefs. If I created a worldview when I was 6, 7, 8 years of age, what can I do now that I'm 35? And that's when I decided I wanted to help people quit drinking alcohol. And that's when I created what was called Needy Helper, and it's now called The Truth About Alcohol.
Brilliant. And just before we get into that, those changes you talk about, all these huge change in your life. I mean, giving away all your stuff to a friend, for one, sort of jumps out at me. Was that very quickly? Was that almost all in at once? Right, I'm changing everything, or was it a slow, staggered process over time?
I've been very lucky in my life. There's a lot of people in my forum, a Strive Community Forum, who will say, if this decision was taken out of my hands, it would be a lot easier. If my wife said to me, I'm going to leave you if you don't stop drinking, or the doctor said, if you drink another drop, you're going to get cancer, it'll be easier for you. And I look back at my life sometimes, and I had a lot of things happen to me that were forced. So my wife says, I want a divorce. That's forced, right?
Yeah.
I was a coward, Andy. I knew that I was miserable, but I didn't have the balls to leave her because I was afraid of what would happen beyond that, right? So that happened to me. And then when she found out I was seeing someone else 6 months later, when I fell in love again, she had erupted, put all my stuff in a room and said, you have a week to clear it, otherwise it's going in the tip. And I stood in that room and looked at everything and just burst out crying, thinking, is this my life? Like 35 years in this room? Like, what am I going to do with this stuff? Like, why do I want a Lord of the Rings trilogy and all these CDs and stereos? And I remember I had a Bang & Olufsen stereo I paid £9,000 for, right? It's like, I'm looking at, what the fuck do I want a £9,000 stereo for? So I just literally rung my mate up and said, do you want my life? And he said, what are you on about? I said, just come down, clear everything. I took Kindle, laptop, bag of clothes, my Bose headphones, and my mobile phone. And I took a PlayStation for my boy to play on when he came to visit me, and I moved in with my mum. And it was the most liberating feeling ever, not having that anchor of personal possessions. And you don't understand it until you experience it. And no one's ever likely to want to do it because they haven't got the balls to do it. But when someone turns around and says, get your stuff out, and you're then faced with that decision, it makes it a little bit easier. So I was a little bit fortunate, I think.
After you gave all your stuff away, what next?
So then I'm stuck in a quandary that a lot of people kind of get in, whereas you're stuck in a job that you hate, you realize that like I got very, very angry when I realized that I'd been conned into believing that alcohol had any value whatsoever for so long, right?
Yeah.
I got very angry with the world, with the marketing industry, with my mentors. I was just a fucking raving angry person. And I said to myself, I got to save everybody from, like, you know, experiencing exactly what I'm thinking. Because think about it. It's like being in a prison, but the door's open and I'm walking in and out of it. But all my mates and my family, they think it's shut. And it doesn't matter what I say to them. They won't leave this place, right? So I thought to myself, I need to do something to help them. But how do you get from earning 60-odd thousand pounds a year on the railway to starting this business, right? How do you do that? So, cut a very long story short, I was playing poker a lot of the time. It was the one thing that I really loved.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it saved me, you know. It gave me something to focus on that wasn't drinking. Because if you drink when you play poker, you're going to lose all your money, right? And I thought, if I was a professional poker player, I would have the time to be able to play whenever I wanted, and I'd be able to create this side gig to help people quit alcohol. So I decided to become a professional poker player. And to cut a very long story short, I created a goal to earn 45,000 in a year. And if I, through poker, not just playing poker, and if I did that, then I would quit my job on the railway. And I wrote to a load of poker magazines and said, look, I'm going to quit my job on the railway and become a professional poker player so I can help people quit alcohol. Would you want me to write a column for you? And one of them wrote back to me and said, yeah. And I was like, holy shit, I don't even know how to write. Like, so I quickly put together an article, sent it in to them. They posted it. They wouldn't pay me any money. They just put a blurb on the end. I ended up having this monthly column in Poker Pro Europe magazine. And then it just skyrocketed. Someone loved the column. I remember they rung me up. It was Bluff Europe magazine. And they said, would you write for us? I said, yeah. They said, we'd like you to write an article. It was taking me an hour to write an article, Andy. And they said, we can only pay you 230 quid. I was like, 230 quid for an hour's work. And then I got a job I got asked to go to Vienna to cover a poker tournament. And then when I was in Vienna, they said, can you go straight to Barcelona? And then I was in Barcelona, he said, can you go to Venice? And then I was in Venice, and he said, can you go to Baden? And I just ended up, it was a real exciting time, but a real challenging time, because, of course, I was going through a divorce. I had my son back home in the UK. My wife wasn't being very flexible. So if I was in Baden at a poker tournament, at the weekend I was supposed to see my boy, she wouldn't let me change that weekend. So there was sometimes I was going months without seeing him. And then everybody on her side of the family was saying, wow, this guy's changed so much. He's the worst dad in the world. Yet I was in this spot where I had quit the railway and I needed to make this work. And suddenly people were paying me more money than I would have earned as a professional poker player. So I became one of the top poker writers in the world, which is where I think the podcast came into it, because I've interviewed every single top poker player in the world. So I use those skills to create the podcast and so forth. And during that time, as I write and I'm traveling around the world, I'm slowly creating what is now the truth about alcohol is my side gig. So that's effectively how it happened. Yeah.
Brilliant. And do you still play?
No.
Not sort of. What reason? Just
the only time I play, I get invited to poker tournaments a lot by poker companies. So I've been invited to Barcelona, and what they do is they invite me out there, and then they'll pay for me to play, and then I write about it while I'm there. So that's the only time I'll play. The reason I don't play, Andy, is and you'll know this as a footballer. I loved football. Man United, mad. I don't even watch football anymore because it's just they're not priorities for me. I need to change the world, and I can't change the world while I'm watching Man United or I'm playing 12 hours of poker. I would rather use that time to spend with my kids outside of it.
And that's a really interesting sentence you've just said there, because I feel exactly the same. You know, when you connect with this passion, with this drive like you have and like I have, it's all about how can I help people, how can I serve, how can I learn, and then all those things that once you sort of held dear, not that you drop them or you don't love them, there just isn't place for them anymore. Like I rarely ever watch football anymore. For example, I just don't feel that I've got time for it. And I don't feel that I'm missing out. I don't feel that my life's any less rich because I don't watch football. I've just managed to sort of slowly push that out of my life because I've got other stuff to do. I want to read the books. I want to, write. I want to learn. And I just think I haven't got time for that. It's things like golf and all those things that I used to play a lot of. It's just not on my radar anymore. It's just for the right reasons, because you've got this passion, you've connected with this drive. It's just lovely to see.
It's a really good point, right? Because people look at me and they say to me, where do you get your fun from? And what they're missing is that my meaning and purpose is to help people quit alcohol. How do I do that? I do that by interviewing the likes of yourself on my podcast. I do that by writing books, by writing blog posts, by creating training courses, by communicating with people in a forum, much like you do. That is fun for me. That is interesting for me. That is absorbing. It's deep and it's rich for me, right? Now, I come from a school of thought of lean principles, right? So I love The Machine That Changed the World, right? Where a group of MIT students went to Japan to look at the Toyota production system to see how they're taken over the world, right? And they come up with these lean principles. And one of them is a Japanese word called muda. And muda is waste. And there's value-added waste and there's non-value-added waste, right? So value-added waste, for example, is me right now writing poker articles for a living. It's not aligned with my meaning and purpose, but if I don't pay it, I can't pay the bills, right? Yeah. Because the truth about alcohol doesn't sustain itself. So that is value-added waste. Non-value-added waste is watching football. I don't need to watch it. And by watching it, it's just a waste of my time. Yes, there's an argument that it could be entertaining, right? But if I'm willing to sacrifice that entertainment and I don't miss it, to me, it's just a waste. So I really channel on where is the muda in my life? Where is the waste in my life? And then just getting rid of it, and getting rid of non-value added waste, boom, just like that. And working out plans to get rid of the value added waste, such as let's grow the truth about alcohol. I mean, I get paid, £3,000 a month to write 25 articles a week for this company, right? So I need to make £3,000 a month through the truth about alcohol in order for me to no longer have to do that poker writing. And that removes that waste. And now I'm more aligned with meaning and purpose. And I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, exactly. And that is so key. And it jives very closely to what we do at One You Know Beer. Again, it's very much giving people the space and the chance to actually reconnect, realign with their core values, their meaning in their life. And the best part about all of this is going alcohol-free genuinely gives you the chance to do that. And in many ways, I say this a lot to people, I think their relationship with alcohol is a blessing. And actually the fact that it's clearly put them on their bum in some shape or form, it's obviously shaken them out of that sort of midlife malaise or whatever you want to call it. And it's made them reevaluate and look at their life and look at what they're eating, look at how they're behaving, look at who they're with, is a massive blessing, because so many people never even reach that stage. They just go through life and they just tick along somewhere in the middle and they never get shaken out of it. No. And I think in some ways, there's a lot of pain associated around alcohol, but it's also a blessing when it comes along and it shakes people out of that mindless autopilot, and actually it makes them reevaluate their life and their meaning, purpose, goals, and all these things. It's huge.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. It is not about quitting alcohol. This isn't about alcohol. This is about the fact that we have a very, very finite time on Earth. The older we get, the quicker the clock seems to be running. We need to be really doing what we want to do while we're here, exactly. and not drinking. It allows us to achieve that goal, because we are now thinking about all the major decisions that we need to make in our life.
And then we had last week was Addy Jaffe. Do you know Addy?
No.
He's got a wonderful TEDx talk. I won't spoil it, and we mentioned it in the podcast last week. But he said something that really resonated with me. He said that if people come to him and after 8 weeks or 90 days or whatever, they've just quit alcohol, then he's failed. And I just thought that was really powerful. And it's so true, isn't it? It's not just about giving up alcohol. It's about so much more than that. In fact, that's just a conduit. That's just the excuse that just sets up the platform in many ways to go in and change everything, if you so wish. And I think that's a really powerful statement that you're getting across as well, the same as us, that actually it's so much more than that and everything to gain, because it is that mindset, and that's what we talk about so much, is flipping that mindset between giving something up to gaining this massive advantage. And for so many people, the only way to experience that is through the first-hand experience of not drinking and taking that mindset, exactly as you say. Right, I'm going out tonight, I'm going to go and enjoy it. It's just a mini challenge. I'm not missing out. I'm not going to deprive myself. This is actually an exciting thing. And then when I wake up the next day feeling brilliant and I can still have a fantastic social life the next day, I'm going to remember that, and the time after, and the time after that, and then I'm going to do more socially. And slowly but surely it's this upward spiral, and you start to smash all those limiting beliefs. But that does take time, because as you say, so many people start out a bit on the fence or a bit unsure, or it's so ingrained, that conventional wisdom, that they're going to be boring or they're not going to have no fun and all those things. It really takes time, and I think that's probably the biggest battle that we're up against, is to try and convince people, otherwise.
I think that's what you do really well, though, isn't it? Because one of the biggest mistakes that people make, of course, is they quit drinking alcohol, and then they go back to it because they think, well, this is boring. Where's all this fun stuff that Andy and Lee said was going to happen? And of course, like we are talking about here, unless you change your life and fill your life with all these wonderful things that you want to do, of course, when you quit drinking alcohol, it's going to be boring. You can't just quit drinking alcohol. It's about changing your life, right? What you do really good at 1 Year No Beer, and we don't do it. We don't do this for a very particular reason at The Truth About Alcohol, is you have challenges, right? So someone will come to you. Last thing probably they want to do is like think about quitting alcohol forever. So you say to them, why don't you try quitting for 30 days? Why don't you take this 30-day challenge? And then after that 30 days, they get a bit of confidence, don't they? And they think, well, why not go for 6 months? And why not go for a year? And it just, but to think about this being like, oh, I'm gonna have to quit forever, is a really challenging thing. So I do like what you do with the 30-day challenges. Yeah.
And what's your opinion on the people that come through your courses? Is it about abstinence ongoing for life, or do you recommend that if they wanted to, they go back in a controlled format? What's your opinion on that? I know it varies from person to person.
As you know, I've been doing this since 2009. In various different ways. And I only started to get traction, I would say, in the last 12 months when I took Seth Godin's marketing seminar, right? Here I am thinking to myself, I know how to quit drinking. I was doing everything. Like, I'm creating training courses, trying to give them away. I'm doing coaching for nothing. I'm like, where is everyone? Like, I would kill for this. I remember I paid $3,500 for a Jack Canfield training course, and like, I'm trying to do the same thing and give it away for free. And I realized when I was doing the Seth Godin seminar that my voice wasn't being heard, because you've got some monsters out there. The Alcohol Addiction the AA, huge. Hello Sunday Morning over in Australia, 500,000 forum members. Soberistas with Lucy Rocker, 350,000 members. Yourself, 1 Year No Beer, a really well-run, well-drilled, well-marketed, thorough organization. And there's me, like, just slapping on a T-shirt to get in front of a podcast, hoping I'm going to change the world. So I learned through Seth Godin that I needed to find a little area for myself where it was a little bit quieter. And I did a little matrix, and I said at the top of the matrix here, brain disease. And then I wrote at the bottom, psychological issue. And then I went across here and I said abstinence. And then I wrote here moderation. And then I plotted in where you were. And I plotted in where Hello Sunday Morning was, where AA was. And there was a clear gap there for somebody to say, I don't believe that alcohol is a brain disease, and I don't believe in moderation. And luckily, that little gap, which nobody was covering, really spoke to me. It was what I truly believed. So we end up having a very small niche of people who don't want to be called alcoholics. Like my saying is, when I do my podcast, I am Lee Davy, I'm not an alcoholic and I refuse to be anonymous. We don't believe it's a brain disease, and we don't believe in moderation, because we think ultimately moderation is an issue. Because we believe at The Truth About Alcohol that alcoholism itself is an invisible, dominant, violent belief system. It's not a brain disease. It's It's violent. Why is it violent? It's violent because it kills 3.3 million people a year, which is more than war, homicide, and terrorism put together. And it's the causal fact. It's one of the causal factors in over 200 diseases. And if that doesn't sway you, go to town on a Saturday night and see how many bouncers there are on the door, and ask yourself, why do they have to be there, right? Or go to A&E on a Saturday night. It's violent. It's dominant because the World Health Organization said over 52% of the world's population, adults that is, have tried drinking alcohol. And if you listen to this podcast, likely as you're not in Kenya, you're probably in the UK or Australia or the US. Look around you. You're probably one of the only people who doesn't drink. I am one of the only people I know, that doesn't drink. So it's dominant. Why is it invisible? Well, it's invisible because 3.3 million people are dying a year, and we advertise it as being fucking great. Like, it's invisible because we never made a conscious choice to drink. I never sat down when I was 14 years of age and got myself a bit of paper, wrote a cost-benefit analysis. Should I drink or should I not drink? Probably going to fuck my liver up. I'm going to get a sexually transmitted disease when I get wrecked and have sex without a condom. I didn't do any of that. I just literally said to myself, boom, what am I going to drink? Because this is what I'm programmed to do. I'm programmed to have sex with as many people as I can. I'm programmed to drink as much as I can. And if someone sticks a drug in front of me, I'm going to do that as well. But I'm not going to take ecstasy, funny enough, because I saw a picture of a young girl who died of ecstasy when I was younger that her dad put up there that changed my entire view around ecstasy as being not a good drug, but a terrible drug. But everything else around me, alcohol was brilliant. Santa Claus drinks alcohol. Jesus Christ turns water into wine, for fuck's sake. So we believe that it is a real issue in the world where, particularly in Western culture, we have no idea why we're even drinking. And our cognitive dissonance prevents us from even questioning it or challenging it. And let me ask you this, Andy. How many times do you bump into somebody and they say, what do you do? And you say, I help people quit alcohol. And the first thing they'll say is, oh, wow, that's fantastic. I don't have a problem with alcohol. But Frankie down the road, right? That's because we've just held a mirror up. And the dissonance is smacking them in the face. And they don't want to hear it. They do not want that dissonance. They don't want it. They want it as far away as possible. So we believe that I have a 17-month-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. If people are going to moderately drink, then people, if I moderately drink, I'm telling my children that it is okay to moderately drink. If I tell them that it's okay to moderately drink, I'm part of the system. I'm part of the matrix. I'm no different. So although I can see the incredible wealth and mass of good that people can do to attack that area of moderation. So Hello Sunday Morning, for example, is a good example of that. If you want to moderate, go to Hello Sunday Morning. They'll look after you. I like that idea, but it's not for me because it doesn't fit with my own ethos. So when people come to me and want to moderate, I send them to Hello Sunday Morning. If someone comes to me and they just want to try it for 30 days, I send them to 1 year no beer. If someone thinks it's a brain disease and they want to give up all their power and give it to God, I send them to Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah, and it's actually brilliant to hear you say that because, but this is the thing with this whole alcohol space, just while we're digging into it. And back to the very first point I made when we started this podcast, there's just not enough choice for people, is there? There really isn't. When when I can name pretty much on one hand all the people in the alcohol space. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we look at the size of this problem, which is absolutely huge. And I'm not talking about alcohol dependent people. That's huge in itself. I'm talking about binge drinkers, people that overdo it on a Saturday night, people that are having 2 or 3 glasses of wine a night and think that's okay, or a glass of wine. There is such a broad spectrum of people that have got, quote unquote, some sort of defective relationship with alcohol, whatever way we look at that. And you're right about this whole cognitive dissonance that people have to it. They don't want to hear the message, but there's more and more people that do, and there's less and less choice in many ways. That's why it's wonderful to see what you're doing and actually to be niched, to be in that area, because I think that's what we need. We need people, man-to-man marketing almost, all the different varieties, so that people can come along and there's a whole plethora of choice where they can go. And as you say, if they turn up and they're extreme and they need a certain approach, maybe it is the AA, maybe it's a challenge with one beer, or maybe it's what you're doing. And I think that's a fantastic thing, and we need so much more of it. Is the truth.
We need to be brave as well. So, like, I'm running a training course, 3-month training course on Sunday, and I wrote to, I think I've interviewed 130 odd people. I've got this training course. I know it works. I've got people who've come through the other end who don't drink, who have changed their lives, who are now moderating future courses. I know that it works. My problem is getting to enough people, right? So I wrote to all those 130 odd podcast guests and says, hey, why don't you tap into your email list, send your people over to me, and we'll do an affiliate deal so you can have some money or whatever. And you were one of the people who wrote back to me and said, right, well, let's do something. Let's get on my podcast and advertise it. Now, that's very brave when you think about it, because what I actually come across a lot in this industry is people wanting to protect their own, because, you get into that position where not only are you trying to save as many people as you can, which is your core mission, but in order to do that, you need to free yourself up to do that full time. And nobody's going to come along and pay your bills. So you need to make it work as a business as well. And I think where the alcohol industry lets itself down right now is by not advertising their so-called competition more avidly. And this is one thing, again, I learned from Seth Godin in the marketing seminar. Look at your books behind you. Yeah, if you're an author, where do you want your book? You want it in a library with 1,000 other books. Yeah. Because people who read books, your market, the people you want to read your book, hang out in libraries, So don't be afraid of competition. You need to say to someone, look, you want help. This is what we do here at The Truth About Alcohol. This is what we do here at 1 Year No Beer. This is what we do here at AA. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, here is what we can do to help you by sending you other places. And so I'm really grateful, and I thank you for what you did, because it shows me that at 1 Year No Beer, I can trust you. I can trust the philosophy. It makes me feel good. It ties into my core values, where other people, I'm a bit like, you what?
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it is so important. This is my, a take on this completely, is that we need to help as many people as possible. And if that's us, brilliant. If that's you, brilliant. If that's Annie Grace, amazing. If it's Addy Jaffe, if it's, give people choice. We should all work together. This is such a huge problem. Exactly that. And I can see when it becomes too business-like and it's like, I've got to protect my space, I think that's completely the wrong approach. And I've always taken that approach to my broking business. It was the same. It was like, let's just be open about this. And then you end up being much more successful. You end up helping lots more people by sharing and giving people choice. Because you say, ultimately, it's the same type of people. And our biggest mission, really, for all of us, I think, is to give the medical profession, is to give those parents, friends, family choice as well. So they hear about us somehow, somewhere, so that when they speak to those people in their life that are struggling a little bit, and maybe they come to them and say, look, I'm having a bit of a problem, don't really know where to go, I don't know what stage I'm at, they themselves can give better advice rather than a bit of a one-stop shop approach at the moment that I think for lots of people it's completely the wrong advice.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we're up against, actually getting the message out very broadly that there's lots of options, or there's more options, but even still there's nowhere near enough options in reality, because it's such a huge space. And there's, as I mentioned, I can name probably about 5 or 6 people that are in this space. And
well, what I'm trying to do at The Truth About Alcohol, and this started to bear fruit, is that you'll listen to me on the podcast, you'll grow to trust me over a period of 6-7 months or whatever. You will then come to the Strive Community Forum. We do a bit of work together. You're checking in, and you're helping other people. And then you take the course. Then you graduate through the course, and then we give you some training. And you moderate the next course and get paid to do it. And if we give you more and more courses, now the people who are struggling with meaning and purpose, at the core of all meaning and purpose is service. It's helping other people, helping other human beings. So what better way of cementing the knowledge and understanding that you need in order to be someone who doesn't drink alcohol than teaching somebody else what you've just learned? It's absolutely a fantastic model, in my opinion. And it gives people that confidence to walk the walk, earn a bit of money while they're doing it, and then think to themselves, you know what, maybe I could do this full time. And then if they do, we have more people out there. Because some people will eventually say, oh yeah, I'm working for the Truth About Alcohol and Lee's paying me some money. That's great. But I'd rather do my own thing. So then they create their own podcast and their own blog, and we see this thing grow. And I think ultimately we do need to do that, because if 3.3 million people a year are dying, and it doesn't seem like that's kind of like reducing, then people need all the help they can get, right?
Yeah, completely agree, 100% of everything you're saying there. It's such a big problem, and it's so nuanced that the more people involved that can create their niches, I think the more people that we're gonna help, and that's ultimately what our meaning of our purpose is, and what gets us up every morning and drives us to do all this stuff, and we love it, And I think the more people like us we can get involved. So on that note, where can we find more about you?
The website is www.thetruthaboutalcohol.co.uk. So that's the main hub.
Okay.
And if you go there, you will find all our blog posts in a little section called Alcohol Musings. Very short blog posts. Again, really on the Seth Godin theme. You can read them like in 2 seconds type of thing. I'm not a long form writer in that respect. You will find access there to the Truth About Alcohol training course, which is our 3-month online training course that we run. We try to run as many courses as we can, to be honest. It's group learning, up to 10 people per course. And you will also find on there access to the Strive Community Forum, which is our movement where we help people, stop drinking alcohol effectively. And you can also find us at the Alcohol Addiction Podcast, which is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, you name it, we're there somewhere. And get there, because I believe the Home podcast this week folded. We're talking about, not enough of us. Holly Whitaker and Laura McCowan, they've just decided not to do the Home podcast anymore. So there's 1 billion listeners with nothing to do. So, listen to the 1 Year No Beer podcast and listen to the Alcohol Addiction podcast. And we're also on Instagram as well, The Truth About Alcohol. We don't bother with Facebook and Twitter, and you can email me directly at thetruthaboutalcohol@gmail.com.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure, Lee, and I wish you all the best. I'm sure we're going to do many things together in the future.
Yeah, and you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Nice one.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Another inspiring guest, hopefully tickling your ears and really touching a nerve inside. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you different flavors, different insights, different ways, different things to consider on your alcohol-free journey. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, 1 Year No Beer, Facebook, 1 Year No Beer, and Twitter, OYNBUK. We are live in your ears on the 1 Year No Beer podcast every week. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the 1 Year No Beer podcast. For a full list of episodes and to join in the challenge yourself, head on over to oneyearnobeer.com. oneyearnobeer.com.